On October 7th, 2006, the first episode of a brand new 4Kids TV show premiered. This show took kids' love for anime, card games, and action to craft a brand new series, Chaotic. This show would run for 3 seasons to critical success until a lawsuit over the rights for Chaotic led to a halt in production and eventually the death of the show. What sets Chaotic apart from the dozen other kids' cartoon shows axed way too soon from the mid-2000s is this one had a card game attached to it. In fact, this card game was designed before the show, and the show was designed to show off and sell the cards. I love Chaotic. It's a game I've been collecting for about 5 years now, and it's something that I have a couple cards left over from when I was a kid. They're all chewed up and beat up and really kind of destroyed now. So I went online and I've been purchasing cards just to add to my collection, and playing the game has been a ton of fun. It's been dead now for about 10, 12-ish years, maybe even a little bit longer, but I still love this card game, and I know a lot of people have fond memories of it. And so I want to go through this video about how to play the game. The cards are really expensive now, like to a ridiculous degree, but you can still buy some common cards, throw together a deck, and maybe splurge on one of your favorite cards from this TV show and play the game again. It's really fun, really nostalgic, and I hope you enjoy learning the rules with me. So let's go over the overall goal for the game. So the overall goal is to defeat all of your opponent's creatures. You and your opponent set them up in a triangle, and like chess, you're going to move your creatures around the board. If they come into contact with an opponent's creature, then you battle. At the start of battle, the player who moves plays a location card, draws an attack card, and then plays an attack card. Then it passes over to the opponent, they draw an attack card, play one from their hand, and then back to you. This continues back and forth until one of the creatures is defeated. Once a creature is defeated, it passes over to the opponent, they get to move their own creature on the board, and if it lands on the same space as another creature, then there is combat. The opponent plays a location of their own, and the process begins again. You repeat this over and over again until all the creatures for one player are defeated, and the person with the remaining creature wins the game. You can choose to play with 1 creature, 3 creatures, or 6 creatures. 6 creatures was the standard for playing back in the day, but playing with 1 or 3 is great for beginners learning the game. Importantly, the game has a rule of 2. No more than 2 copies of any card in your deck, no matter what type of card it is. Cards that are unique mean you can only play 1 copy in the deck, and for legendary cards, you can only have a single legendary card in your entire deck. Now, that's the overall goal. Let's go through each of the different card types, and then I'll come back to the rules at the end of the video. First off, creatures, the backbone of the game, and what you're going to use to win. Creatures have a lot of information going on. On a creature, they have their tribe, their ability, their disciplines, their energy, elements, and music counters. We'll look at Maxor and identify each one of these. Maxor is a part of the Overworld tribe, hence his blue card color. On the left-hand side, you can see that he has different disciplines. From the top to bottom, it goes courage, power, wisdom, and then speed. On the right-hand side are the 4 different elements. A creature could have all 4, potentially fire, air, earth, and water. Maxor only has fire and earth elements. We'll come back to how disciplines and elements impact the game a little later on. On the bottom right of the creature is the energy or health. When you're doing combat with an opponent's creature, you're trying to deal damage and get their energy down to 0. If you do that, then they are knocked out and sent to the discard pile. Next, we have music counters, found on the bottom left of each card. Maxor has 2 music counters. Music counters are like the mana resource in Chaotic, used to play music cards. Those are basically spell cards that we'll come back to a little bit later. You will also use music counters to activate your abilities. Maxor has an ability where you can use 1 music counter to heal a target creature for 10 energy, and so then you would lose that counter in the middle of the game. You can use your creature's abilities even if they aren't the ones in combat. So for example, if Heptad was fighting an opponent's creature, you could use Maxor's ability to heal Heptad in the middle of combat. Creatures come from 6 different groups. You have Overworld, Underworld, Danian, Mepedian, Marillion, and Tribeless. Each of them has their corresponding color to kind of go with them. If a creature ever has the keyword loyal on it, that means that can only be in decks that play creatures from the exact same tribe. For example, Interest Nature Force. If you have her in your deck, you can only have Overworld creatures in your deck. Each tribe has a different theme around it as well. Overworld is usually all about courage and wisdom. Underworld is all about power and the fire element. Danian is about the earth element and boosting each other with synergistic effects. Mepedians are all about speed, and Marillions are about adding music counters. Tribeless creatures don't necessarily have a theme, but they just have really, really high stats and raw power. Next are the attacks, how you're actually dealing damage in the game. Looking at Armageddon for the first example. This attack is unique, so you can only be played at one copy in the deck. Looking at the damage, on the far left, 10 means this card does a base damage of 10, and then to the right you see Fire, Air, Earth, and Water, each with a 10 next to them. This means this card would do more damage if your creature has more elements, so Maxor would deal 30 damage with this attack because he has the Fire and Earth element. Some creatures will also have something to boost these attacks further. Kaor the Fierce has the ability Fire 10, meaning he'll deal an extra 10 damage for any attack that he has with the element Fire on it. For example, if Kaor the Fierce used Fire Ram, he would deal 30 damage. On Fire Ram, you'll also notice it says Stat Check Power 60, deal 10 damage. Stat checks on attacks are ways you can do extra damage. A stat check will check your creature, for example, if Kaor the Fierce has 60 power or more. Fire Ram does an additional 10 damage for a whopping 40 damage from Kaor the Fierce. There's also Stat Challenge. On Piercing Brilliance, it says Stat Challenge 15, deal 10 damage. Meaning if your creature's Wisdom is at least 15 more than your opponent's creature, then you deal an extra 10 damage with that attack. In order to balance out these stronger and weaker attacks, you have to worry about the build cost when making your attack deck. If you look at Armageddon, it has a number in the top left corner, that is 5. That's going to be the build cost. In Chaotic, your attack deck is 20 cards, and the build cost of all 20 cards cannot exceed 20. There are a good amount of zero cost cards that will allow you to play expensive attacks like Armageddon, but they're obviously a lot weaker than the attacks that cost more. Your attack deck is a separate deck from your location deck, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. Something important to note is if your attack deck ever runs out, you just take all of your attacks from your discard pile, shuffle them up, and replenish your attack deck. Now moving into battle gear. There are some other ways you can customize your creature with battle gear. These equipments are given to creatures before the game starts and will give them buffs throughout the game. Battle gear starts face down, and it's only flipped face up once that creature battles, and then it'll stay face up for the rest of the game. If a creature is defeated in combat, then the battle gear equipped to that creature goes to the discard pile as well. Whip Crack is a great example of a battle gear. It gives the equipped creature 15 power and giving it Fire 5 as well if it's an Underworlder. Also important to note, abilities like Fire 5 will stack, so Kaor the Fierce equipped with Whip Crack will do an extra 15 damage for fire attacks. There are a ton of other really cool battle gear. Some of my favorites are things like Gigantroper. It just turns little creatures into these massive threats for opponents by setting all their stats to 70, as well as Horn Saber, which makes it so all your opponent's creatures on your side of the board take 5 damage every time they attack. There's so much customization you can add to your creatures and your deck by just deciding what battle gear you want to give them before the game starts. Next we have Mujic. Mujic are a very unique part of the game. You'd have 1 Mujic for every creature you play with, so if it's a 6v6, you get 6 Mujic. These all start in your hand at the beginning of the game, so you'll always have access to them. And they have a whole range of effects from boosting attacks, healing damage, preventing damage, and dealing damage. Cannon of Casualty is an Underworld Mujic, meaning you have to use a Mujic counter from an Underworld creature to cast it. It does 20 damage to any target creature. Mujic is divided up by a tribe it works with, but there's also generic Mujic, such as Chorus of Kothica, which lets a creature play Mujic from any tribe. The number of Mujic on a card tells you how expensive it will be. Both Cannon of Casualty and Chorus of Kothica each cost 1 Mujic counter. Finally, we have locations. Locations are very important because they determine who attacks first as well as apply other effects. When deck building, you have to select 10 locations and put them into a deck separate from your attack deck. At the start of a player's turn, they'll flip over the top card of their location deck, and then from there decide where they'll initiate combat by moving a creature. If, for example, you flip face up Castle Bodrum, the initiative is power. This means that when combat starts between 2 creatures, whichever one has the highest power stat will get the attack first. Locations also have other effects. Castle Bodrum lets players add Mujic cards back to their hand from their discard. Tyrannicus Threshold makes it so all creatures have no tribe and can only cast generic Mujic, and Mipidim Oasis gives Mepedian creatures a huge attack boost on their first attack. For initiative, if both creatures have the same stat or both meet the requirement, then the turn player who owns the location gets to go first. Now let's go through the setup of a game and example turn. Let's have Kaor face off against Maxor. Each player starts with their creatures face up and battle gear face down under their creature. Each player will have their Mujic in hand and draw 2 cards from their attack deck and keep that in their hand. Maxor's going first, and they reveal Kordak Falls as the location for turn. Maxor moves to the space with Kaor on it, initiating combat. Kordak Falls says the initiative goes to overworld creatures, so Maxor has the first attack. Core Deck Falls also boosts the energy of all engaged creatures by 5, so Maxor now has 65 energy to KO's 75. Now that each creature is engaged, we reveal the battle gear, flipping that face up. Maxor has the Drill Dozer, so he gains an extra 20 energy, putting him at a whopping 85. KO has Web Crack, giving him 15 more power, putting him at a staggering 105 power, and giving him Fire 5 on all fire attacks. Now we draw an attack card. Choose from one of the now 3 attack cards in their hand and play one of them. Maxor's played Hydro Balls. This does 5 damage, and because Maxor's Wisdom is above 50, he gains the element Water until the end of combat. After that, it passes over to the KO player. They draw their 3rd attack card. Seems to be playing Fire Ring, dealing 15 damage to Maxor, but taking 10 damage for their own attack. Now, this is the same turn cycle. It's going to go just like this, drawing attack cards, playing them, using abilities, and possibly using the music from their hands until one of the 2 is knocked out. And now you know how to play Chaotic. It's a pretty straightforward game that I find a ton of fun. A lot of the thinking goes not into the actual gameplay, but into the deck building process. There's still a lot of decisions and skill in playing the game, and a lot of things you have to consider and think about, but you spend a lot of time kind of in the tank thinking about how do I optimize this deck and be as creative as possible, which is why I think it's so much fun. Now, the game is expensive nowadays, like I said. Ultra Chaotic cards can be like $100 to $500 depending. What I really recommend, you can go on eBay and buy 2 of the original starter decks for like 40 bucks and play with those with friends, and then maybe buy some super rares or rare cards to upgrade those decks over time. Also, it's a dead card game. No one cares if you're printing out proxy cards using your computer to play with the cards you really want to play with. There's also a great website called Chaotic Recode, which is an online sim made by the fan community if you want to try it out and not pay for cards. I really recommend it. It's a fun game. It's really nostalgic. The entire Chaotic series is online for free on YouTube if you want to check it out because you've never heard about it before. It's a really fun TV show. It's incredibly nostalgic, and even if you're new to the game, this dead game, it's still fun to check out and kind of look at these old media franchises from 10, 15 years ago. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I had a ton of fun making this video. I like to do one random Chaotic video here and there because it's a big passion of mine, and I hope to get some more people into the game as I do so. But again, thanks for watching. If you could leave a comment, like, subscribe, I'd really appreciate it, and have a great day.